Senate Republicans turn on Trump over suspend the Constitution talk. Senate Republicans are slowly but surely distancing themselves from Donald Trump after a call to terminate the Constitution and a meeting with anti-Semites, though there's no sign any will start actively opposing his 2024 campaign. The former president's campaign launch is landing with a thud among Republican leaders, many of whom began losing interest after his loss to Joe Biden and are now openly pining for a crowded primary field to take on Trump. That hope for intra-party competition is a flashback to the opening days of the 2016 election, except this time Trump has baggage ranging from stoking an insurrection to a sit-down with Ye and white nationalist Nick Fuentes, to his latest call to illegally unwind his 2020 defeat. As polls show Governor Ron DeSantis, Republican Florida, competitive with Trump and many other Republicans eye a run against him, some in the GOP think Trump might even end up pulling the plug on his nascent campaign. I just think, in the end, he will not end up running because of the polling, said retiring Senator Rob Portman, Republican Ohio. The trend line is not positive. Trump on Saturday falsely cited massive fraud in his 2020 loss before calling for a termination of all rules, regulations, and articles, even those found in the Constitution, in order to reinstate him as president or hold a new election. That comment, Portman said, makes no sense. Many election officials, including Trump's own former attorney general, have affirmed that no voter fraud occurred on a scale significant enough to affect Biden's victory over Trump. And spending yet another year litigating 2020 is too much for some party leaders. I'm at a loss for words. We need to move on, Senator John Cornyn, Republican Texas, an advisor to McConnell, said of the constitutional suspension posts from the former president. Cornyn added that the prospect of Trump winning the nomination is increasingly less likely, given statements like that. While few Republicans spoke out publicly before returning to Washington on Monday, Senate Minority Whip John Thune, Republican South Dakota, said, "Of course I disagree with that," when asked about Trump's comments. The number 2 Senate Republican would not say whether he'd support Trump if the former president wins the GOP nomination in 2024 and said he's just not going to go there at this point. That's a long way off. But Thune did predict Trump's remarks would fuel the ambitions of Republicans who'd want to take on the former president. In a 2024 primary, it's just one of those intuitively obvious things. Whether a candidate for office has sort of a bedrock principle, are you going to support the Constitution? Thune said. For him, it's not all that unusual. But it will be the grist and plenty of fodder for those that are looking to get into that race. Trump could face competition from DeSantis and a handful of Republican senators for the nomination. Rather than actively oppose his candidacy, many in the GOP are betting he will fall flat on his own this time around after twice winning the Republican nomination. Some said the party's lackluster midterm results speak for themselves. The facts of the election in 2022 are just indisputable. The ultra-pro-Trump, handpicked by Trump, based on loyalty to Trump? Those candidates wildly underperformed, said retiring Senator Pat Toomey, Republican Pennsylvania, who voted to convict the former president in his second impeachment trial. It's pretty clear that he's become a toxic force, and that's going to diminish his influence a lot. His Suspend the Constitution posts on his Truth Social platform mark the second time in 2 weeks that Trump has prompted criticism from within the GOP, after he dined last month with anti-Semitic rapper Ye, better known as Kanye West, and white nationalist Nick Fuentes. That sit-down led Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell, Republican Kentucky, to predict that anyone holding meetings with people who use their profiles to disseminate bigotry are highly unlikely to ever be elected President of the United States.